Hi, I'm Paul Sexton, and I'm going to be continuing my session with stud high-low, this time with a little bit higher limits. We're playing 8 and 16. All right, I'm picking up this hand in the middle, and it's awesome that I'm starting this because I'm playing an ugly hand here. I was low with the deuce. I had jack 10 in the hole, which is ugly, but the guy only limped in with a 7. And on the turn, I caught a 3 diamonds, which is a very strong-looking card. And I'll go ahead and show that hand. On the turn, I caught a 3 diamonds, and I went ahead and let out, acting like I had 4 cards to a low, maybe a diamond draw or something strong like that. And he caught a deuce, which is an equally strong hand too. Actually, I didn't bet out. He bet out with 7 deuce, representing his low, which is what he had. He had 7-6 deuce ace to start, and I called with deuce trade diamonds, knowing that if I catch another low diamond, I'm probably going to take it from him, and not just half the pot, but the whole pot. I catch a deuce, which makes me open deuces, which is another scary card for my hand, and I went ahead and bet out. He caught a 9, which was a bad card. It's a brick for him, and he makes so he's still only drawn to a 7 low. I could have a much better low than him. I could have 3 deuces. He doesn't know what I have. It's one of those things about having a disguised hand. It was a strong position to be in, even though I don't have much in that particular case. I have nothing, as a matter of fact. But on the turn, I catch 3. I catch a pair of on 6th street, I catch a pair of 3s. Now I have deuces and trays showing. He catches an 8, which is basically the point where I'm hoping to get half the pot now, because it's like he's almost, unless he made a pair, he's got an 8 low, and we're going to split the pot. He ends up making, on the river, I make 10s up, which is, I'm not going to bet my 10s up. Normally in stud high, I would bet my 10s up, but you're so able to be getting swept or scooped with 10s up in stud high low. I just check it. He checks back. We went ahead and split the pot. So there was no blood there because I was low. He was the only person playing. All we did was split the blinds. But it's a case where had the cards come just a little bit differently on, say, 6th Street, I would have stolen the whole pot from him, even though I didn't have the best hand to start out with. Some marginal hand. That's another marginal hand that people like to play. Is amateurs a lot of times will play ace, deuce, queen, which it's not a terrible play, but with a 7, 7, 8 deuce behind you, there's not like you're playing with somebody who has 3 cards above an 8, like a king, a queen, and a 7 behind you, or a king, queen, and a 9. You might raise that because an ace up, it's a strong looking hand. But with 3 cards lower, they're probably going to be playing lows anyway. And once again, you don't have anything. You have an ace and a deuce and a queen. It's like you're trying to go half high, half low, and you're not strong in either one. So that's a hand. It's one of those marginal hands. Had the circumstances been different, you might raise it there. You're definitely not limping in, but in this particular case, you're going to fold as far as starting hands to play. And as far as playing a little higher limits, going from 1 and 2 to 8 and 16, you're going to be playing with players who they're still not going to be professionals. There's still equity in these games, but you're going to be playing with players who are a little smarter. You're not going to see as many people raising with 9s or 10s or jacks or even kings and queens. But because of that, it enables you to actually open up your play a little bit. If you're in, say, a steal position with kings or queens, and there's a jack behind you, and the guy had to lead out with a 4, which I'm going to go ahead and limp in on this hand. You can go ahead and raise with kings there because they're just going to know that because you're going to be able to know if they catch a low card on the turn, they're going to be able to push out, and you're going to get out of the hand very cheaply. You're never going to get crushed with a hand. This is a marginal call. We might get a free card here. My starting hand, my board looks very dangerous. 4, 5, 6 with 2 diamonds. Problem is we don't have anything. And same with this as stud. There's not as enough. You can't raise. It's not like no limit where you can push a guy off, and your board is just so scary you can push him off. Even if you raise there, the guy's just going to call. He's just going to call saying, well, okay, you might have me beat, but I'm going to see it because it's only going to cost me 2 bets to see it anyway. Here's a case where, well, I'm not really sure what the hand has, but this guy had a flush, but he was representing. That's a good show right there. That's a good hand to show. Because this guy he took off, whoa. Okay. Gotta love the people who complain all the time. I've known this guy forever, the natural ace. But it's one of those cases where in stud high, that this kind of hand would never happen. They would just not go raising back and forth, back and forth. One guy would raise, the other call and say, okay, show it down. But in this particular case, this guy right here, who had 8-6-3-10s, he had 8-6-3-10 showing, he had a jack high flush. He made a mistake and keep raising. He should not have done that. But he went ahead and raised it out. On the river, he made a flush. And this guy's showing deuce, deuce, 3 ace, which is a very low-looking hand, but that is such a dangerous-looking hand. He's got ace, deuce, tray of hearts, and a 2 of clubs. The guy could very easily have 2s full. He could have a straight, which then he would actually be winning. But he can have a flush too, and especially if he has a flush, he's got the ace, which you can't beat. You cannot beat an ace high flush, and that's the case. And the fact that he raised there, which shows there is still equity in some of these higher games. When the guy with the ace high flush bet out, even though it looks like he has a low, the guy's raising with a flush, with a jack high flush, for only half the pot. That is an unforgivable mistake because he's not going to get anything out of winning it. The guy has a low made, and if he has a high, you're beat. So he's going to scoop all of it. You're not betting. You're not winning anything by raising. And he ends up, of course, it is a disguisable hand. The guy actually made a low anyway. He had a low. Even if he didn't make the flush, he was only going to get half the pot. And he got scooped because the guy made a flush too. You can't raise there in that situation. You cannot be raising your high hands as much because you're only getting half the pot, and a lot of times you're getting scooped. With your high hands of, like, say, a flush, there's good hands to make because you're going to get half the pot. A lot of times the guy broken low, you get the whole thing. But once the guy starts raising, you can't be raising him back. You're so close to getting scooped there, and you're not winning anything by raising him back because you're only getting half the pot. Another one of the starting hands, I start off with 2 10s there, and my 10s are live, but you see an ace behind you, there's a 3, I forget what this guy had, but I think it was a low card. You're just dangerous, those pairs higher than an 8, you just can't play them. It goes a little different though for playing pairs lower than an 8, or lower than a 9. If you have a pair of 8s, 2 split 8s, it's much stronger to have because it looks like you're playing a low. It's disguising your hand thing, and that's you can scoop hands very easy if you have 2 8s. You hit an 8, and people think, oh, he just paired, and then you scoop the hand, and then they look at you and like, why did I lose that hand? It's because of your starting play. It's your disguisability. You just have to be careful when you start with hands with pairs. When you start with 2 pairs, like this is a perfect hand to show it. This is not a strong hand because there's a 7 out. So this is not as strong a hand because it's unlikely you're going to hit 3 7s, which I shouldn't even be playing this hand, to be honest. I'm going to go ahead and fold here. But if that 7 hadn't been out, that would be a great hand to play. The problem is if you don't hit a low card and you don't hit a 7, say on 4th Street or 5th Street, you can't get caught into thinking, oh, I'll make 2 pair or I'm going to improve. You have to be smart enough to get rid of your hands. When you don't make anything with your split pairs and these things that have a possibility to make you a lot of money, you just can't get caught up with them. You have to get rid of them in 5th Street. If your opponent makes 3 little cards, or say if if he takes off with 2 kings and he makes, you still have higher cards, you have to be smart enough to get rid of these hands. It's limping in there just because I'm talking and not paying attention. I limped in with 2 7. There was a 7 out, and it's hard for me to make a low. I'm playing against guys who are making lows, and the high hand, if you take off with 2 7s and a deuce, your kicker's bad, and there's a 7 out, your chances of improving that hand are not very good anyway, and you're not going to win too many highs playing with just a pair of 7s, even when the guy takes off with 3 low cards. So limping in was a mistake, and I rectified that by not making it any worse and just go ahead and fold once the guy raised. And just to go in a little bit further, when you're playing a little bit higher limit, this is the stud high low. In the lower limits, it doesn't matter so much when you play 3 lower cards, what the 3 lower cards are as much, because there's so many people out there playing hands, and they're playing high hands, that if you make any low, a lot of times you win half the pot, and you're going to win a big half the pot because there's so many people in the pot. When you play a little higher, it makes a big difference on what your 3 lower cards are. If you take off with 8, 7, 4, and none of the cards are suited, that's not a very good hand to start off with in the low because somebody's going to be taking off with a better low hand than you, or they're not going to pay you off. It is imperative that you start off with like an ace. More importantly, an ace than anything else. My dad is very, very convinced that he's so far and away the best stud player, Stud8 player, Raz player, anything that's limit in a stud game. Completely convinced he's the best player. Unfortunately, me and Matt basically agree. When you get to limit hold'em, then you have some disagreements. Matt doesn't think he's any good. He's actually a very good player because he's very, very aggressive. My dad thinks he's a good player. I think he's nowhere near aggressive enough. He puts too much of his stud game into limit hold'em, which is good as far as, you know, making sure to push people, but he's too conservative, and when he shouldn't be. He's not pushing. He's not raising enough. His game is too conservative for limit hold'em. No limit hold'em is where the most controversy is at on who's the best player there, especially since everybody thinks that they're the best player. This is interesting hand. Guy just bet out there. I'm sitting here with, I got into this hand because I was in dead steal position with Jack, Queen 10. The guy had a 4. Had it been anywhere other position, I would never play this hand. But since I was the dead steal, I went ahead and raised. He caught a king. I caught an ace on the turn, so I bet again. But he catches an ace, which he's either representing 4 cards or low or an ace, or a pair of aces, which is bad for me. But I have a lot of outs here and a lot of potential with this hand, so I'm going to go ahead and see 6th Street. Now he catches open kings, so that just finished my hand off, so I just gave the guy 16 bucks on 5th Street. So that was ugly, because he could have had 4 cards to a low, which I'm dead to a low, or he could have aces and kings, and then I'm in bigger trouble again. So unfortunately, it's an ugly hand, because you would never get into it unless you were dead still position with Queen Jack 10. You'd never play it. And you end up losing a bunch of money, which is sickening, but it's part of the game. Here's a case where you start off a pretty good hand, 7-5-4. These guys both limped in with a 5, which they're probably limping in with, since I have a 5, there's very unlikely they have 5s themselves. They have 3 low cards. They both caught extremely strong cards with matching sixes. And that will end our hand. But I'm sure they'll probably have similar hands right now, unless one of them, they could very easily have paired up. You know, if they took off with like 5-6-3 and they made a pair of 6s, which is where the hand gets a little strong. Now this guy makes open 6s, so it's unlikely that the other guy paired, but this guy could have made 3 6s pretty easily. Both of them catching a low card on 6th Street. And check on the river. What do the guys make? This guy made it. He took off with 8-5 deuce is what he took off with, that's why he limped in. He didn't raise. He didn't have the greatest starting hand, and wish I'd seen the up cards. I'm going to go ahead and call this just because I have 3 cards to low if they all break out, and also I have a potential to actually win the high here, and you could scoop the pot. That wasn't that great because even though I caught 4 cards to low, I have 4 cards to like one of the worst lows possible, and they both caught low cards. Now, I'm going to go ahead and see it just because it's half a bet and there's 2 people in the pot. But unless I improve here, which I did improve, I improved a lot, and they got worse. I made a low, which means they cannot beat my low at the moment. They're likely to beat it, but I also am open in a straight, which it was good for the high. So I'm going to go ahead, and they're checking to me, and I'm going to go ahead and bet it. And my hand looks good too, even though I have 8-7, which they don't know. I have 6-5 deuce showing. Now I got a flush draw also. Now I'm probably going to lose low because this guy has an 8, unless he took an 8 to start with. I'm going to go ahead and bet it because I have very high possibility of winning the high here as well. And I have a low made. I could improve on that low, which I didn't. But I'm going to go ahead and check it back. I hope he doesn't scoop me. He did. He made a better low and his ace play because I didn't even have a pair, which is brutal because I blanked out so badly on the river. But once again, it's just one of those things where the cards, it's not bad play, it's just your cards are running bad. That was not the best hand. What did the guy ended up making? He ended up making he made a better 8, which is scary. He made an 8-5-4 deuce, 8-5-4 deuce ace, and then he made and his high hand was a simple ace king high, and that beats my hand because all I had was open ended and I had a flush draw and I had an 8-6-5 low. That's where stud high can get a little frustrating for you because I didn't even have any hand for high. I had a queen high. We have another playable hand here. Another opportunity to lose some more money. We catch a very good card here on the turn. If he's going for a low, he's in big trouble. And we're going to push this advantage for sure. Now we made 6-5-3, and it makes it look like we might scoop the pot right here, because we made a pair of threes, but he doesn't know that, and that's actually not that bad for the high. It's not a great card, but it's not the worst card in the world either. The worst card would have been a jack or a 10 or a king, but that makes our hand look so much more positive. This is one of those hands that's it's a disguisable hand. I don't like the fact that an ace is out, but we have 3 hearts. This is a marginal hand, especially if it gets to me. The guy raised now with an ace. I'm going to have to get rid of it. But if he had not raised, I definitely would have been racing there, pushing out, representing either aces or 3 cards for heart. But there are 2 hearts out, another ace is out, and he's already raising. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of it. I have ace 8-6. It's not a very strong hand, but the fact that there's 2 8s out means I'm probably not going to pair my 8s, which is that's good in that respect. As far as you're not really going for highs, going for a low, it makes your low easier to make. But I have an ace, a concealed ace, a very strong card, and I have a 6 showing. He made it. He catches an ace there. You could not have caught worse cards there. He catches a matching ace with a deuce, and I catch a 6. You're done with that hand. And here's a little bit stronger hand. Now my split 6s with a 4 is a better hand. I'm even going to call this ace, which is that's a questionable call, but I'm going to call it because my 6s are alive. I have a 4 instead of like an 8. It's not a bad. It's not or like a card higher than an 8. This is not a bad hand to start with. It's a disguisable hand for sure. Now he catches a king clubs, which is a strong looking card. If this was stud, I'd be out of here. But now my hand looks much stronger. I have 6-3, and if he's playing for low, his low is looking broken at the moment. Now that was ugly, but I need a 5 for a straight, and it looks like I have a 7 low. You could very easily check back here, but he could have paired his 3s. He could have taken with 8-3 something, and then he's just going to give you the pot right here. And it looks like I have a 7 made. Now I made 3-6. Wow, this is an interesting hand now. Now if he took off with 2 aces, I made open 6s. So if he's drawing too low, now it looks like I have the low, and then I have his high beat too, which I could get check raised here, it doesn't really matter. I'm hoping to just steal the pot right now. Now I made 4 6s. Well, now my hand looks a little different. Now I'm hoping he's got aces full, because I'm going to bet here he's going to raise me, and I'm going to go ahead and take a big pot off him. I'm hoping he didn't make a low, because if he didn't make a low, I'm going to go ahead and scoop the whole thing. I went ahead and made the whole low. And just because this is full tilt and they shuffle the whole cards, it looks like I took off with 3 rolled up 6s and made 4 6s, and nobody ever questions that you played with 2 6s and a 4 against an ace. Don't worry about it. I had 3 rolled up 6s, made 4 6s. That's a very nice profitable hand there. You take off. That's one of the things we're talking about. That's exactly the reason why you play 2 split 6s, because if you catch a 6 on 6th Street right there, he thinks you took off with 3 little cards. He doesn't know. He thinks you took off with 3 little cards. You make the low cards there. You make a 3 and a 7, so it makes you look like you have a low hand. You catch the 6 on 6th Street, and betting out, usually you're going to lose him right there. But instead, he thinks all you did was pair. You didn't improve your hand. Meanwhile, you did. You made 3 6s. On the river, I can make a low. I can help out and make a low. I can make a 5 for a straight, which is also a low and a high card. You can fill up, and if he breaks down, which he did, he didn't improve. He makes aces, and he just had aces, which he's never going to call you in stud high, but that's just a disguisable hand. He thinks he could still win the high there when you catch it open 6. I didn't even need to improve, it turns out. I was still going to scoop the hand, but I did make 4 6s, which is fun to even see, and you scoop the whole pot there, not even making a low. That's why split pairs under an 8 are strong hands, when split pars over an 8 aren't. They're just not disguisable, and they're not as versatile. That's going to conclude our session with 8 and 16 high-low. I can't imagine a better hand to quit on, making 4 6s there. And it's an excellent way to point out the way to finish up a hand, playing with certain starting hands played out. So thanks for watching.